Hi guys, Paul here. So let's talk about some horror. And let's start with Ronald Malfi's small town horror. So Andy is a lawyer in New York City. His job is going well, he's very happily married, and he's about to have his first child. When out of nowhere he gets a phone call from a former friend he hadn't seen since they were teenagers who tells him he needs to come back home. And home is a small coastal town in Maryland, Kingsport, Maryland. And he hasn't been there in a few years. He kind of left it in the rearview mirror, wanted nothing to do with it. And he hadn't seen Dale or the rest of his group of friends since they were teenagers. But he drops everything, lies to his law firm, lies to his wife, and heads back home. When he gets there, Dale tells him that he needs his help, that even though he's not a criminal lawyer, it's the only person he can trust because things are happening that might have been related to an event when they were kids, and his wife has gone missing, and he may be on the hook for her disappearance or her murder. Because not only did he lie about what he knew regarding the night she disappeared, but they had been having incredibly difficult marital issues for a long time. She had been cheating on him, and he knew it, the entire town knew it, and now he was in trouble because nobody could find him. And we are introduced to the rest of the cast of characters that had been friends when they were kids. Besides Andy and Dale, there's Meech, who is now pretty much a homeless drug addict. There's Tig and Tigany, who is the lone female of the group. And Eric. Eric is now the deputy sheriff, which is fairly shocking considering his dad had been deputy sheriff and his dad had been severely abusing him when he was a kid and then killed himself, committed suicide. So Eric becoming, following in his footsteps is a surprise to Andy. The rest of everybody who stayed in the town knew about it, but this definitely it's not an expected turn of events. Now, slowly it is revealed that something happened on July 4th, the night of 4th of July, almost 20 years ago. It's coming up on the 20th anniversary. And they hadn't been friends since. Before that, they were the best of buds. They hung out together. They did everything together. They were inseparable until that night. And then whatever happened that night had split them up, and they hadn't had any contact really with each other since then. And part of the story plays out where you learn a little at a time what happens as they were kids and how that event, now 20 years later, could be affecting a bunch of things that are happening to each of them now. If that sounds familiar, if it brings to mind the Losers Club from It and several other stories, yes, it is very reminiscent of that and feels very reminiscent of that throughout. It's a well-known, well-used trope, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it is a trope that's well-loved. And while we're following these characters through this story, trying to figure out what is happening into this town, what is happening to these people, and what happened to Dale's wife, we are treated to a very slow burn ghost story. What is happening now in the story is kind of creepy and very much more the horror aspect of it. Whereas when you find out the events that happened 20 years ago, that is a very real event, a very based in reality event. Seems to have been an accident where somebody died and it was caused by them. Now, I'm not going to give you the details, but I felt that part, the story of how everything started and what the event that kicked it off, was a little underwhelming. It was very kind of mundane in and of itself. But the real story revolves around the events that are happening now and how what had happened then may have been affecting it. Is there a ghost? Is somebody trying to get revenge? Is there a horror element that's supernatural? Or is this being a situation where they're feeling guilty? Meech's drug addiction is playing into it. Are real life events just transpiring to make it feel like something supernatural? And I do admit that the story, as it plays out, has some very creepy moments. And you do have that almost unreliable narrator feel to it as you're trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And I was pretty sure that I had the end twist figured out because there's always a end twist. And well, I wasn't necessarily wrong about what had happened. The way Melfi played it, it was very understated, so it was kind of almost like you're feeling a known entity that he didn't put out there. But as a reader, you kind of understood this was part of it. But the fact is that there was a twist, and it was earlier than I expected. It wasn't at the very end, and it did catch me off guard. It did surprise me, so props to him because he actually did get me. I wasn't necessarily wrong about what I was saying. It just transpired a little bit different than I expected. The end was still what I thought it was going to be, but the twist came early enough that it was even more surprising that it was that early in the book. And it, like I said, it did get me, which, like I said, points for him on that. But as you're going through, there's a whole bunch of creepy events that could be ghosts, it could be murder, it could be like actual things happening in the real world or in the supernatural world. Especially there's a whole bunch of things that happen with birds, turkey vultures, and other birds that are really creepy. And there's some things that may or may not be related to the event from 20 years ago. And if you're into slow burn ghost stories, you're probably going to like this because Melfi's a good writer. He's a very, very solid writer, and he tells a good story. So if this is your kind of thing, if you're into the slow burn, if you're into ghost stories, if the Losers Club kind of trope works for you, you'll probably enjoy it. I don't like these as much. For me, I don't like the slow burn stories as much, and I've seen this done so many times. I've been reading for horror for so long that it isn't as effective on me, but I do appreciate that he's a really solid writer and it was a good story overall. And like I said, if you're into this, if this is the kind of thing you like, you will like this because he tells a good story. Just understand, like I said, it's a very slow burn, kind of mystery, creepy story. It's not overtly horror. It's very much a slow burn ghost story. So I'm going to say if it sounds like it's up your alley, give it a shot, give it a read. You'll probably like it. Overall, I'd say this is a library pickup. Go check it out and see if you like it. If you're convinced that this type of story is something you like, then you probably will because his writing is very solid. And if the story itself, if the style appeals to you, this is going to be something you like. All right, let's talk about the Cats of Ulthar. Now, I'm doing this a little different because I have two parts to this. I have two different stories that are related to this. And I'm going to start with the beginning, which would be H.P. Lovecraft's original story. Written in June of 1920, published in Tryout magazine in November of 1920. And H.P. Lovecraft did say he borrowed some of the idea, the Dark Wanderer story line, the Dark Wanderer idea from Lord Dunsany and his Idle Days on the Yann, I think it was called. He made no qualms about that. That he was a fan of Lord Dunsany, and it seems that Lovecraft, as you may know, is a fan of cats. Now, cats have been part of horror stories for as long as horror stories have been around. So this kind of almost comes as a love letter to the mystical nature of cats, the mysticism, the very essence of what cats are. And if you're a cat fan, you'll probably get a kick out of this. Now, the Cats of Ulthar, the original story, is only like 4 pages long. But the amount of stuff that he packs into this very short story is pretty amazing. And if you're a Lovecraft fan, you're not surprised by this. If you haven't read Lovecraft, let me suggest you check this one out. Now, it's like I said, you could probably find this for free online. It's only about 4 pages long. You could download it, print it out. It should be in public domain at this point. It should be really easy to find to check it out. So basically the story is told almost like looking back. It's told from, a future point of view. Now, in the town of Ulthar, no man is allowed to kill a cat. Killing a cat is illegal. And you may say, well, duh. Well, this was written in 1920, and it was about a story that took place, even before that. So nothing's taken for granted there. But what had happened is in this town, there was this couple who used to trap and slay cats. And the town knew about it, and for whatever reason, they didn't stop it. It was going on, and it was happening regularly, and people wondered about what they were doing with the cats. They had some very bad ideas about what they were probably doing with the cats, and you could probably figure it out. And if you haven't read the story a couple times, you'll get it because it's kind of implied. But so one night, these dark wanderer caravan shows up in town, almost like a gypsy caravan, shows up in town to do their thing. And there's this little boy, Menace, who has a little black kitten. Now, he's an orphan, and he doesn't have anything else in his life. That's all he has is this kitten. And he loves it to death, and everybody, understands that. Well, one night, the kitten goes missing. And, well, you can assume what happened to it is, it's kind of made to be, and you're supposed to assume it. But, in any case, as a child will, he starts crying and, reacting like a child would until he doesn't react like a child would. He stops crying, starts praying, starts going through this almost ritual, and the sky changes, and you see all these dark figures in the clouds and such, and then, it goes about his business. Then the caravan leaves town, and the night the caravan leaves town, every single cat in town goes missing. Every cat, no matter where they were, just disappears. And nobody knows what's happened. The entire town is just confused. They assume that the old people did it, but they can't figure out how they took an entire town worth of cats. They're just gone. And then in the morning, the cats all show back up. And obviously by the cat's reaction, the cat's state, something happened. And you can figure out what happened when you're reading it. I'm not going to share it with you because go read it. It's only 4 pages long. You can find it for free. And if you aren't a Lovecraft fan, give it a try. I think you'll start to get an idea of why Lovecraft is so loved. And so you don't know what happened. You never find out what happens in the time those cats left until they get back. You just have the assumption by what you find out when they're home, what you understand about the situation they are in when they get home. But otherwise, it's a great little story. Like I said, about 4 pages long, and the amount he packs in there is just amazing. But I came across something. I was sent an email about a comic book, a graphic novel called The Cats of Ulthar. And it was sent to me by the author, Bruce Brown. A PDF was sent to me. And I went and read it. And honestly, it only took me a few minutes to read it. I went through it in literally just minutes because it's a graphic novel. And it's written by Bruce Brown, and its art is by Thomas Boatwright. Now, what this is it's the story from the cat's point of view of what happened in the space that we didn't get. The missing time that H.P. Lovecraft did not give us. It's the story from the cat's point of view from that missing time. And I thought that was pretty genius because it is something that, that it's kind of has a place. It's kind of would make people interested if you're a Lovecraft fan. Now, I had read this first, and it made me go back and read the original Cats of Ulthar, which I thought was really cool because it gave me an opportunity to revisit it with looking at it from a whole different perspective. Obviously, this isn't official. This is, fan fiction fill-in. But I found it to be really enjoyable. The art I thought was really good, and it was just a fun little thing to fill that gap, to speculate on. And like I said, we knew what had happened, even if we weren't told the details. And this is just kind of the more of the details of what happened. And it's pretty obvious that Bruce Brown and Thomas Boatwright are fans of H.P. Lovecraft in this story, because I think they did a good job with it. Now, like I said, it was a really quick read. And I spent about a day with this on my mind, because like I said, I did enjoy it, thinking about what the best, what best this would be enjoyed by, who best this would be enjoyed by. And I thought this would be a great gift with the holidays coming up for somebody who was a fan of H.P. Lovecraft and cats, because it's a great little art piece. Like I said, it's a really quick read, so it's great for somebody who's a fan and wants that on their shelf, it isn't something that you're going to like buy to spend a lot of time reading, because it is like a really quick read. But it makes a great gift, or it makes a great piece for somebody who's like a big H.P. Lovecraft super fan. It's a nice little piece to add to your collection. Like I said, it fills in that story. If you know that story, if you're an H.P. Lovecraft fan, it's a nice little, it's just a nice little thing to have. It's cute and it works. So if you or anybody you know is a Lovecraft collector and a cat fan, this would be a nice little conversation piece, a nice little unique piece from an independent author, an independent artist, that you could put on your shelf as something that isn't available for everyone, that isn't there, that everyone doesn't have. And I think it'd be a nice little treat, a nice little extra to have on your shelf. And I'm glad I read it. It was fun. The art was good, the storytelling was good, and it fit in that, like I said, it fit in that gap that's missing really well. And I kind of enjoyed it. Like I said, it made me go back and read the original story, which says something. So yeah, so thank you to Bruce Brown for sending that to me. And there we go. A quick little horror video for you just after Halloween, stuff I read on Halloween. And I hope you enjoyed it. So please subscribe if you haven't. And remember, the secret to Zen: read books, pet dogs, listen to metal. And thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.